Good day, everyone. Good day. Welcome to Speak Your Mind. Your mental health depends on it. I am Cecilia Salazar, and welcome to our show. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm Joannah Bharose. I'm sitting in for Dean this week. We truly appreciate that you're connecting with us today. And of course, ladies, it's always my pleasure to be chatting with you all. Please remember to share with all your friends online. Encourage, we need the viewers to come in and we need people to participate in the discussion online.
Thanks, Joannah. Hi, guys. Vaughnette Bigford here, and welcome to all of you who are looking on television and those of you who are joining online. We look forward to your feedback, your comments, your interaction, and let's just spend a wonderful hour together.
Yes. So, Speak Your Mind was created so we can have a weekly discussion on mental health issues to start breaking the stigmas associated with it. And in having these discussions, our aim is to find solutions so we can all cultivate better mental health practices.
Good mental health is not a single destination. It'll never be. As human beings, different experiences trigger us in different ways throughout the day to either react in nurturing, healthy ways to ourselves and others, or sometimes destructive ways to our own mental health.
And if you want to nurture good mental health, you need to consistently look for opportunities to learn from your experience. You need to develop your ability to feel, express, and manage a range of positive and negative emotions, and develop the capability to form and maintain good relationships with others.
Good mental health is really about learning to speak your mind, talk it out. But also you must learn to listen. You have to be able to listen and allow the other person to speak their mind. Do not interrupt. You may want to fix things while they talk, but if you have not heard the entire situation, sometimes you may be fixing the wrong issue or only part of the issue.
True.
Yes, Cecilia, I think we're all guilty in some way of trying to fix when sometimes we don't even know what we're doing, but it comes from a good place, but sometimes it's not the best approach. Looking at our youth today, I cannot imagine how they are coping with not having the level of social interactions we had all growing up. And this is growing up as recent as 2 years ago. That face-to-face connection, that human touch with friends and family, liming, going to the malls, playing games with your partners in the arcade, those interactions were all so important to who I am today. And it's still very important to all of us, especially the young people who are facing a different host of challenges in this digital world.
So true.
You'll remember your teenage years?
What? I remember riding bike on the street and playing with everybody in the neighborhood.
And I'm still trying
But
to have
also a very tumultuous and mentally challenging time too, because of course we're stepping into adulthood. We're stepping into trying to figure out who we want to be and who we are at that time. And it's a time where a lot of our youth step on a dark path experimenting with all different sorts of addictions as their way of fitting in and coping with mental health challenges.
So that is why today we are talking about youth and addiction. We will look at some of the situations that lead them there and some ways they can find help and address the issues before it is too late. Here's a short video about what is addiction.
Have you ever heard someone joke about being addicted to chocolate? Unfortunately, the reality of addiction is no joke. An addiction can be to a substance, like drugs or alcohol, or to a behavior, like playing video games. So what is the difference between really liking something and being addicted? The difference lies in three main things: obsessive thoughts, feeling like you can't stop, and continuing to use or do that substance or behavior despite having negative consequences. Meet Tony. He really likes video games and plays them every day. At first, he kept up with his grades, but started doing less of his homework. Then, he started staying up later and later to play. This caused him to be exhausted at school. When his parents tried to get him to stop playing so much, Tony got very angry, which wasn't like him. He started skipping school, so Tony's parents had him talk to a counselor. He didn't want to at first, but things slowly started getting better. The real Tony returned when he got some balance back in his life and reconnected with those around him. So how does someone become addicted? Why can't they just stop? Sometimes a person starts using a substance or behavior to fit in. Other times, it's to ease the pain from a traumatic experience or mental health issues. It also has to do with how the brain works. When you do something that feels good or exciting, like eating ice cream, the pleasure pathways in your brain are activated and feel-good chemicals are released. This same pleasure pathway is activated when you consume drugs or alcohol. Over time, the pathways in your brain get used to having this thing in your life, which can make it really hard to stop. If you feel like you just can't stop doing something, you're not alone. With the help of a counselor, you can begin to work to get your brain back from being hijacked. It will take time for your brain to create new pathways, but you can get back on track and find some peace in your life.
Wow. Great
Yes.
perspective. I think sometimes we don't recognize within the addiction as a loss of control, and a lot of people don't recognize as a loss of control. They like to think that they're still in control, even though it's a recognizable addiction. To guide us through our discussions today on youth and addiction is a good friend, forensic psychologist, Swayne-Leo Hosein-Cadogan. He's been with us through the last few episodes, and I'm hoping he'll become a permanent fixture with us.
Yeah, me too. And we also have Sherman, Brathwaite, and Marvin, Mohammed, both registered mental nurses, to talk with us as well.
Joining us as well is drug counselor Michael Mcknight. Let's connect with them now and start the conversation.
All right. Good day, guys. Good day, all. Leo, thank you so much for joining us again. Hi, Leo. And welcome, Marvin, Sherman, and Michael. Thank you for taking the time to share your experiences with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure being here.
Hi, good day. Pleasure being here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having us.
Good afternoon.
Great.
Good evening.
Missing something?
Thanks for having.
All right.
Sorry, but chances switch devices. I think my feed is a bit problematic right now.
Well, that's how it is. We're in the age of technology. To those of you who have joined us online, please share this show on your timeline. We need as many people listening in on this conversation as possible. It's information that I think as many of us should have. So share your thoughts and comments and questions for our panelists as well.
But before we start, can these gentlemen tell us a little bit about how they're involved with youth and addiction? And Mr. Mcknight or Michael, maybe we can start with you.
Okay, I work at the St. Anne's Hospital. I'm on the assistant. I'm not registered now, I'm an assistant. And the ward on which I work on is forensic ward. That's a ward where they send people from the courts to get evaluation. I've started a program there, a job program where those coming from the courts and the patients who are there on the ward that I'll go through. I do job counseling course with them. Job counseling session. We have group therapy. We discuss drugs, the effect of drugs, and so how many drugs is affected them mentally. I'm also involved in going to schools and talking to school children about drugs, drug addiction, right? And I also, along with my other colleagues, with Marvin, Cadogan, and Sherman, we started a group where we'll go into schools and speak about issues pertaining to mental health, right? But even before the group started, I would often go to schools, talk to school children about the effects of drugs meaning from cigarettes, alcohol, cocaine, marijuana, the roots. So I've been doing that for a couple of years. I was once a RI teacher, music instruction. I taught RI for 11 years. And in teaching RI, I also include discussion of drug abuse, alcohol, and so forth. So I've been doing for a number of years. Where I work, I spearhead the job counseling, putting the clients, the patients who are there on the road. I've also done it on other wards where I worked on previously, where I engage in talk to the patients, mental patients, pertaining to drugs, alcohol, and so forth.
Right,
So
excellent.
that's what I do.
And
Okay.
this is Marvin, right?
Yeah. Okay. So
Right,
my name is
Marvin.
Marvin Mohammed. I registered nurse at St. Anne's Hospital. I used to work with Mr. Mcknight at the forensic ward. I was kind of like his assistant in his job program. I currently work at the children's unit. So the topic we'll be discussing today, I'm actually seeing the effects and the need for it currently on the ward I'm working with. The ages of the patients between 17 and under. The area that I grew up in is Mova, and I see what addiction can do, the damage it causes. So hence why I think this is one of the most important topics that needed. The society needs to hear it, and hopefully we reach a few people today in our discussions.
Thank you so much.
All right. So all these gentlemen I met at the same location. I also work at St. Anne's Hospital. I work on the forensic ward. That's where I met Mr. Mcknight, Mr. Mohammed, and Mr. Brathwaite. The ward that we work on, strictly adults come through the ward. So we see the end product, so to speak, of addiction, addictive behaviors, and how it can lead to a life of crime. And through my interactions with these gentlemen, the prospect for targeting the problem at an earlier age, getting to youths and teenagers before they progress beyond the point of I wouldn't say no return, but before they get to the point where they are well known to the criminal justice system, being able to have that intervention from there and discourage them from behaviors that would lead to addiction, that became pertinent and important. And so that is how I fell in with Mcknight and Associates.
Right, Mcknight and Associates. Well, I think you kind of leading into my next question, which is in my experience, I feel that addiction is all around in a lot of the adults in Trinidad, and I would think it's a problem a lot of adults face. Is that true? How does it start in the youth? You're talking about it with young people.
Okay, well, I've been working in St. Anne's Hospital for approximately 30 years.
Right.
And I probably don't know that, but working about 30 years. And I have realized, now I work on several wards, and it is a fact. I have no data statistics to prove this, but based on my observation, on most wards in St. Anne's, a large percentage of the patients have a history of drug use.
Right.
Now, not all of them, because there are other issues that will result from mental illness apart from drugs. But a large percentage of those patients have a history of drug abuse. They have some from schizophrenia, bipolar, depression. But when they check their history, they have a history of drug abuse. As a matter of fact, I am of the opinion that if you did not have a drug problem, that more than half of the patients of external hospital would not be there. You will still have psychiatric patients, you still have mental ill patients. But if there was, assuming there was no drug, there's no drug abuse, there's no drug problem, there's no drug culture, no alcoholism and so forth, I am very much convinced, based on observation, based on my experience, not on data statistics, but based on working interns over 30 years, when you check the file, if they don't have file, when you check the file, try to go through the files from years before. Their patients have been sent for like 20 years so far. There are patients who have been going and coming over 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. They have been back and forth the same.
Right.
Do you see more adults than younger persons ordered at St. Anne's with addiction-related issues?
Yes, most definitely. Well, one of the reasons for that is because they recently opened a children's unit at the St. Anne's Hospital.
Right.
But as Mr. Mcknight would alluded to, most of the patients coming in, the problems start drug addiction. Most of the time, the drug of choice will be marijuana use. That is one of the main drugs they are usually addicted with. So at this point in time, we do have more adults. Unfortunately, we are seeing an increasing trend where a lot of children are starting to come in for the same drug problem. Currently on my ward, I have one child that is there for marijuana-induced psychosis.
Leo, I wanted to, I'm curious about something. I'm hoping you may have some data with it. Is it that we have not recognized addiction in young people before now or in recent times?
It has been quite hidden, as with a lot of social problems that have existed in Trinidad and Tobago. These things that take place behind closed doors, as they say, very well hidden, very well protected. So the image portrayed to the public is one, but what happens behind closed doors is completely different. Now what we are seeing is that with social media, a lot of these things are coming to light. So you might remember even back in like 2017, we had a spate of viral videos of school children engaging in some truly astounding violent behaviors against each other. And on deeper investigations, you realize that marijuana and alcohol use played a part in many of these behaviors. And so that is where it started coming to the forefront that, okay, so maybe we have a problem here that we weren't paying close attention to. Right. And the police have actually been doing quite a lot of work in the field, but now, as I say, with these viral videos, it is becoming much more known to the public that this is a problem.
Right.
Well, Sherman, we haven't heard from Sherman. We've heard from Sherman.
Yeah, Sherman has joined us. Sherman, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, good evening. Well, as the tag says, I'm Sherman Brathwaite. I've been a psychiatric nurse, working with all these esteemed gentlemen who have spoken before me. For probably the last 16 years or so, I've been at St. Anne's Hospital. I'm qualified in substance abuse counseling and addiction. Having done the course at UWI Open Campus, I've worked at the Substance Abuse Center at Cora Hospital for 3 years odd. Went on to do rehabilitation and psychosocial rehabilitation at the ARIMA Psychosocial Rehabilitation Center. Now, all these places that I'm mentioning are still attached to St. Anne's Hospital. So essentially, I've been a well-rounded burst nurse in multiple aspects of psychiatry for the last 16 years or so.
Nice.
I just wanted, just before we move on.
We move on to the other types of addiction.
I just want to ask here one more thing, and this is interesting information that as they have a new ward for children at St. Anne's. So that's interesting news, I think. How is it, and maybe Leo or either one of the nurses would be able to tell us, how different do you treat the children in terms of addiction versus adults? Because I would be very curious about that.
Marvin? Or...
Unfortunately, my purview does not fall within treating of children at St. Anne's.
So maybe
Marvin.
Michael?
Marvin works in the child.
To segue to Marvin there for that.
Okay,
Yes.
so with dealing with the children, we try to focus on the negative effects that prolonged drug use does cause. As adults who already would have gone through the damage, youths in the early stage, and it's kind of difficult because they think they know that the age where it cannot happen to them, they're invincible. So you kind of have to get through that barrier and try and show them the effects that it has. And you try to bring in people who they know as well. Now, the thing about it is you have to know the situation. Children have different reasons why they might use drugs. So some might be going through a family loss. Some might be peer pressure. Some basically might be they just want to fit in. So when you know the positive factor for the drug use, this is how you tend to treat with them. So if the person is a bit depressed, you try to bring them out of that. You try to give them a reason for living. You try to give them a reason for moving on. If the person wants to fit in, you try and show them other people who fit in without having to do these things. If we're looking at the peer pressure, we try our best to get them to look at a different group of friends, because this group might necessarily know it's easier said than done, but we have to keep working at it. And it seems to be successful at this point in time in terms of the children that I dealt with. Most of them have gone on to do pretty okay. We did have one or two that didn't do as well, but we won't get 100%. We're just trying to save one at a time.
Right.
Okay, very interesting. I think, Michael, we may have some background noises, so I'm not sure if maybe you can check that here. Now, one of the other types of addiction that we do not talk about, because it's really taboo, and this country is very conservative when it comes down to talking things of a sexual nature. It's a little bit of the hypocrisy of how we deal with it, because of course no one in the country is having sex, so therefore no one will talk about it. So one of the types of addiction which is much touted about, and I know there's a little bit of discord globally, but more and more it's gaining traction in all the esteemed places and studies, is talking about porn addiction and how it has changed the world for young adults and their ability or inability to get into healthy relationships or dealing with the human element of growing up, which is so important and sets the foundation for a future engagement with other human beings. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I don't know whether or not any of you gentlemen, you have come across, or it has been a topic of discussion, or we have even looked at treatment. I know Trinidad and Tobago would be a little bit behind in terms of probably treatment for things like that, but it would be interesting to get your take on it.
Yeah. Sherman, it's you.
Okay, so no problem. So Sherman steps forward.
Yeah.
So the situation is this, right? Our country has had this problem where we have been reactive for probably our entire existence. Very little proactive activity has happened. Where we do react to situations, it is when those situations impact some measure of our status quo, our function, whether it be economic or social. That is when we step in to do something about it. So thus far, I don't think we have seen a situation where pornography has reared its head, clearly reared its head to say, okay, I am the problem that caused this situation to result. And so we don't have a treatment program as such, or anybody volunteering to offer treatment services for pornography addiction.
I remember. Yes.
Sure, go ahead.
No, I remember some statistics came out some years ago that Trinidad was one of the highest users of internet porn in the world.
Not what
we
we are.
for 4 years
We still
in a row.
maintain the number one spot.
And
What?
Now,
and
I am
we've only been as low as number three, but we have been number one for the last 4 years.
okay. So I'm going to make a controversial statement here, right?
Wow.
Um, not just concerning pornography, but concerning substance use throughout. Now I am not an advocate for the use of substance, but understanding the definition of substance abuse, there's for me, a very clear distinction between substance use, misuse, and abuse. I have seen individuals use substances and continue to contribute to society without a blip in their function. And I have seen individuals on the other end of the spectrum as well. And I remember having a discussion with a well-known nurse in education circles, Dr. Oscar Ocho. I don't know if you all would have heard of him. We were at Grand Riviere on one occasion doing some community work up there. And he insisted, Sherman, we need to launch a program up at Grand Riviere here, looking into the lives of these young men, and they're abusing substances. And I'm like, Dr. Ocho, what's your measure of abuse for these young men at this point? What exactly is it that you are seeing in these young men that warrants the title of abuse? Right? Because to me, like I said, I have seen it, and I think Marvin could attest to this, right? You have seen individuals who, they smoke. But one thing that we need to understand is this isn't for everyone. So if I have to drag that back, my opening statement there where I said there's a clear-cut line between abuse, misuse, and use, right? Those are clear lines. Our pornography use in Trinidad and Tobago, as mentioned as being the highest, still hasn't clearly manifested itself as a problem just yet.
Well, I think
it could be,
and I think it could be because the problem has not been recognized at all, because we don't talk about that at all. You probably have very few places it's mentioned, so there's no recognition for it, no acknowledgement, I think, and that's maybe one of the challenges there. So it's not that it doesn't exist.
Right.
No, it does exist. But like I said, it has not clearly surfaced as the problem.
Right. Okay.
So just to add on to what Sherman is saying, for it to qualify as a problem, it has to impact on the user's everyday life and function.
Yes.
It has to be preventing him from going to work, preventing him from interacting with his family. It literally has to be dragging him down. And for the most part, we as Trinidadians have mastered the art of a facade. We know how to keep up appearances. And so, rightly, as you say, that problem, that issue is rarely seen. We do some amazing gymnastics, mental and social, to hide a problem.
And I know one of the things in the international community where they've discussed the what are some of the signs of that is often pornography that's at work on work computers, because it means you can't pull yourself away from it. And we have seen public cases in the media and otherwise where people have been fired, lost jobs, or it has been made public about having porn at office. And I know that's one of the recognizable traits of if someone is hooked or addicted on it.
Okay, so Vaughnette.
Can we talk about some other types of addictions that you're seeing happening with our young people? No, none of it's uncomfortable.
We're just moving on. Yeah.
There are.
So if we want to touch a little bit on other types of addiction affecting young people, Leo, maybe.
One of the addictions that have been trending right now is popping pills and gambling amongst the youth. They gambling everything. They gambling the snacks. They gambling the little money they get. They even gambling to do chores. They gambling to do work. And it becoming a very serious problem. It's not rearing its head as yet as Brathwaite would allude to. However, children are engaging in activities due to gambling that we don't think they should be doing at this point in time in their life.
Right.
So I might win, and the loser will have to do what the winner wants, and it's a growing thing now. So it is becoming an issue, gambling, some children, they are addicted to it, and also the popping of pills. The drinking of the cough medicine with the Sprite is becoming a thing that we are experiencing now, and the children, you can't stop them. They hiding and drinking it, as you would say, that
Wow.
they're drinking it in the bedroom. You tell them about it, they throw away the bottle, they go back in the dustbin, pick it back up. And this is where you see the beginning of the addiction starting. So we try our best to nip it in the bud. But
Right,
we
do
can
you think-
see where it
yeah.
started.
Do you think this is triggered by trauma, or because of the pandemic, or this situation right now? Are these things unfolding more right now, you think?
I think peer pressure is a big part of playing it. Peer pressure has been playing a big part in a lot of addictions for some time now. But I think it coming more to the forefront, as Sherman would have mentioned, due to social media.
Right. Okay.
So
But
that
what
is what
can
we
parents?
would.
Joannah,
What can parents look out for?
Well, some of the signs parents can look out for is you see the children moving anxious, they're nervous. Sometimes they just be withdrawn, they keep into themselves, they becoming very private. They don't want to interact much with the relative at home. They want to be with their friends, they want to be outside. And no matter what you do, they're not coming inside. When you go to search a room, or you just walk in the room to say, good evening, how you going? They become very defensive. Why come in my room? You can't be in my room at this point. Why going to my bag? Why you want to know where I'm going, what I'm doing? All these things are signs. It might be nothing, but it could be something. And when we see these things happening, we need to start to pay a little closer attention to what is taking place with our children.
Okay, great.
And
Michael wanted to say something.
Right. Yeah, I want to continue on a point what Marvin was saying pertaining to the cough syrups. Right now, there are statistics proof in the US where prescription drugs is even more popular and is more common than even cocaine and marijuana and so forth. Now, over-the-counter drugs like Benadryl, cough syrup, and so forth, they are not illegal by law. It's not illegal, and it's not stigmatized like how cocaine and marijuana, alcohol, and so forth will be stigmatized. So a lot of young people would take, use cough syrup and so forth. Sprite, perfectly legal. It's not as bad as cocaine and so forth. So they will gravitate to that, feeling that they're not doing anything wrong. After all, these things are legal. Also, a lot of individuals, a lot of young people could be deceived into taking these substances. And by substance, I'm talking about cough syrup. See, if you tell them take cocaine, they know that cocaine is illegal, cocaine is bad. If you use cocaine, you'll go crazy, you'll go mad, you'll go to jail. But if you use Benadryl or cough syrup, that's not illegal, that's not bad, that wouldn't send you crazy. That's perfectly legal. And everybody have cough syrup in the house now because it is advisable because of the pandemic that everybody should have cough medicine in case you have to quarantine at home. You should have cough medicine in your home. So they will use it. But on the very same bottle says you have to take these cough medicine as the doctor prescribed. 1 teaspoon a day, 2 teaspoons a day, as the case may be. If your child is drinking a bottle or half a bottle of Benadryl, of cough syrup, that in itself, even if you're not mixing it with something else,
it's a problem.
Drinking a bottle of cough syrup is in itself just as bad as some of the illegal drugs. Right? And a lot of young people, they are deceived. They're deceived into a lifestyle of drug addiction because they don't start off with cocaine and marijuana. They start off with over-the-counter drugs, and they abuse the over-the-counter drugs. And when they become addicted and they develop a tolerance, when they develop a tolerance to drugs, that's where this amount of drug that don't satisfy anymore. You want something higher.
Right.
Then they'll gravitate to the more potent drugs. Then they'll go, well, the cough syrup is not satisfying me anymore. So they are tempted to go to the cocaine and so forth. But they start off very innocently using substances that are legal, that you can get over the counter, things that they don't even have a prescription for in the first place.
Right.
And they are deceived Jones.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Yeah. I was just gonna say the same thing. I think it's wonderful for you pointing out what we need to look out for as adults and parents. Great tips to look out for. I just want to jump quickly to some of our questions online. As usually, have nice participation from the public. So I want to put in some comments on some questions from the public. We have Dean. Hi, Dean. He says sometimes addiction, especially in youth, can lead to them being socially ostracized. You see a young person who is looking to fit in, and where we ask the question, where are the adults in their lives and the person's family. We have Pamela Singh. She said beautiful. We have Suzanne Hussain. Interesting bit of information on the unit for children who are involved with drug use. So thank you so much for that information on St. Anne's. We have Pamela Singh. I truly have to say I love this form. It is very informative.
Great. Okay.
And I really do believe that parents and the older folks around need to be looking out for the what the young ones are up to. We have Daniela Boise Caliste. Didn't even know cough medicine and Sprite was a real thing. My goodness.
My goodness, yes.
That actually kills quite a lot of people throughout the world.
Yes, well, that was very enlightening. Thanks to everyone for your comments. Keep them coming. And let's move on to how we can deal with addiction.
Countries around the world are dealing with addiction and its impact on their society and economies. We found this TED Talk from 2015 by Johann Hari, who feels that addiction may not have to do with chemical hooks, meaning if you drink alcohol or smoke marijuana, they hook you into chemical addiction. Let's listen to this talk, to a piece of this talk.
But Professor Alexander began to think there might be a different story about addiction. He said, what if addiction isn't about your chemical hooks? What if addiction is about your cage? What if addiction is an adaptation to your environment? Looking at this, there was another professor called Peter Cohen in the Netherlands who said, maybe we shouldn't even call it addiction. Maybe we should call it bonding. Human beings have a natural and innate need to bond. And when we're happy and healthy, we'll bond and connect with each other. But if you can't do that because you're traumatized or isolated or beaten down by life, you will bond with something that will give you some sense of relief. Now, that might be gambling, that might be pornography, that might be cocaine, that might be cannabis, but you will bond and connect with something because that's our nature. That's what we want as human beings.
Wow. Wow. How do you feel about this introspection? Can this really be true? Do you see people suddenly moving from addiction when they find meaningful connections and purpose? Leo?
So this actually links back with what Sherman was saying before, with there being a difference between use, abuse, and addiction. So you don't start off as an addict, you start off as a user. And a lot of the times that use is a form of self-soothing. You are self-medicating. So yes, you've been hurt, or as Dean's comment pointed out, you're missing that connection to friends, family. Something in you is missing, and you're looking to make yourself feel better and fill that void. And the more you use and the more it feels good, that pleasure center in the brain gets triggered, and you want that pleasurable sensation, and use becomes abuse. And then abuse becomes addiction when you can't function without that feeling. You can't function without this thing to fill the void. And you have bonded with that because it is now your friend, your companion, your means of comfort. So it comes full circle to exactly what Sherman was saying earlier.
Sherman, and any comment on what the gentleman said in his TED Talk?
Oh yes, I fully agree with him. There's a concept in addiction where we consider physical and psychological addiction, right? And I tell patients that I interact with that physical addiction most times can be dealt with in like about 21 to 28 days. So physical addiction deals with the body's absolute need for that substance that has been inputted. right? And honestly, you could get your body to function without it back to normal in about 21 to 28 days. But psychologically, that has registered deep within your psyche, and that doesn't leave. What has to happen now is that you need to retrain your mind to not go to that substance, but to that addictive behavior.
Yeah.
Right? So whether it's pornography, gambling, or substance, you need to train your mind not to return to that form of coping, to that body, to that companion. And that's where the whole battle is. And that's why you hear recovering addicts say things like one drink is not enough and 1,000 is sorry, 1,000 is not enough and one is one too many. Right? Or that the first time they go back, it's as if they never left. Because it's deep within your psyche, so it's difficult, almost impossible to remove. It's like a memory. So case in point, yesterday I was at work and one of my co-workers mentioned the name of a place that I would have been to as a child in secondary school. He mentioned Fashion Video Arcade in Arima. Now, I would have left secondary school. I could picture my age. So yeah. Many years ago. Many years, and I'm being honest with you all. That place has never crossed my mind since I left secondary school, because I'm not a video game person. But just that word and the amount of flooding that came back to me yesterday. There were moments I sat yesterday after and I was like, wait boy, yeah.
How easy it is.
How
easy
and that's
it is
because
to go back.
it has registered deep within. And addiction is just that much. It's just that.
You know, as you said, video arcade. When I was at university in the UK, I got hooked on games, computer games, Lands of Lore, Red Alert, and things like that. And I just remember days just going to class and running home. I mean, grabbing a train to get back home just so I could start. And going to university and classes with eyes gravelly because you're getting about 5 o'clock to play to get an hour in before you get back to university. And it's really a terrible thing. I mean, eventually good grades demanded that I kick the habit.
Thank God. Okay.
What are some of the ways our institutions are dealing with addiction? So what's available for those who want help? Leo, you want to start? Or Michael, anyone?
In terms of our institutions that offer programs that deal with addiction, things are done on individual wards, just like Mr. Mcknight would have pointed out, where the workers within the specific institutions start doing programs with their clients. But we do have places like Cora, and Peparo. These are the rehab centers. These are special purpose-built units where every member of staff, much like Mr. Brathwaite, has that training in dealing with addiction. And you take it from the top, from the psychiatrists come all the way down to the nurses and the nursing assistants. They all have that training because you know how they say it takes a village to raise a child. This is essentially what you're doing with working with addicts. You are raising a child because you have to unlearn all these habits and behaviors and relearn new ones.
Yes.
So these are the ideal places.
Retrain your mind. Joannah, do we have any more questions and comments from our audience?
I'm checking here. I'm not seeing any questions coming up.
That's okay.
We had some comments.
Yeah.
No one to say something.
Yeah. You also have AA meetings. There are AA meetings in Trinidad.
Of course. Yes.
A lot of people are not aware of that. But in every AA meetings are all over Tobago. They usually in a school, in an evening school, community center, or a church, or in some cases in a library in the area. Right? You can go on the internet and find out where in China have these AA meetings, but they are all over Tobago. In every city, every town, there are AA meetings somewhere, but a lot of people do not know that they exist. I only found out that there were many when I went UE to do a course in the drug counseling. And then I found that we have AA meetings all over the place, but you wouldn't see a building with the title AA meetings.
Right.
It'll be a place like church, school, community center where they hold AA meetings on an evening. So they're all over. Again, you could go on the internet, Google where in Tobago exactly have AA meeting in each area, in your town, in your village, in your community. But there is a AA meeting thereby. All right. They're also they're also substance abuse meetings, but they're not as common as AA meetings. But if you are addicted to marijuana, cocaine, and they don't have a substance abuse meeting in your area, you could attend an AA meeting because it's basically the same principles, the 12-step principles that they use. So you could go to AA meeting if that's closer to you.
Thank you so much, Michael, because that leads us into our next segment called Finding Help.
One of the major ways our young people get involved in addiction is when they use it to find friends and make connections. But what can a young person do if their friends want them to join in their addictive behaviors? Let's look at this clip.
When you're a teenager, you're constantly bombarded with good and bad advice, life lessons, homework, chores, and peer pressure. Often that pressure comes in the form of drugs and alcohol. It can be very difficult to say no at this age because you're afraid others will think you're lame or that you might get rejected by some of your peers. Even though you might know the real dangers of using drugs and alcohol, you still might have a hard time saying no. Well, the key to saying no is to practice what you'll say before you get in a situation where you're offered drugs or alcohol. That way, when the time comes, you're ready. Take some of these peer pressure related statements, for instance.
Come on, everybody's doing drugs.
Your response?
I think plenty of people aren't doing drugs. Anyway, it's not right for me.
Perfect. Here's another one.
Hey, probably make you feel good.
And you say,
I already feel pretty good, and I don't want to mess that up.
Nothing wrong with that. Let's try a few more, like,
dude, if you're my friend, you'll get high with me.
Your response?
I really like you. I just don't like drugs.
And let's not forget these.
Come on, dude. Nobody will know.
And?
This is really cool stuff, man.
You fire back with,
I'm not taking any chances. I'd be grounded for life if I got caught.
And?
I know someone who got really sick from that. That's not cool at all.
Arming yourself with a wide range of reasons not to do drugs or alcohol is a great way to keep yourself free from using a substance that you know can harm you or your friends. You might even set such an example that your peers will respect you and try to emulate you or come to you for advice. So don't be afraid to rehearse your reasons to say no and put them into practice when the time comes.
Oh, Lordy.
So, if a parent realizes that their young child is having a problem with addiction, what should they do? I want to hear from our experts here.
Marvin?
Okay, one of the places they should go is the Child Guidance Unit. It's located at Pembroke Street in Port of Spain. This is one of the places where there are psychiatrists, nurses, doctors. They would be able to assist you in the addiction, or at least guide you in the right direction. They will have people to check up on you. They will have people to give you counseling that you may need to help you move away from your addiction or what's the reason for it. So the Child Guidance Unit is usually one of the first places you should start. They would help. It also has other places. It has your in the school, the guidance officers, your principals. You have the police youth groups. It also has wellness centers located in different parts of Trinidad. You can just walk in with the child, tell them the problem, and they will assist you. Most likely, they will refer you to the Child Guidance Unit. But usually, these are good places to start.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That is so good. Yes,
Very
Leo.
useful.
Leo.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
One time, what I did with this young guy, he was probably about 11, 12 years. I carried him to the community police. Now, there was a time community police was very, very common. I don't know if it's still around. I went into the police before. I went into them before and I said, this guy has a problem with violence and drugs. And I discussed with them what I want, right? I don't want to get arrested and so forth. I want to go into the police station and I want you to talk to him. Let him know about the consequences of his action, of his behavior. What could happen? You know, he can have been jailed, he can have been, his health can be compromised and so forth. So I went in, I talked to them first. It wasn't my child, but it was somebody in the neighborhood. I spoke to them first, told people what I want, and we had a discussion and so forth. Then I brought them to the police, right? From the time you enter the police station, you know, they get scared or go to jail or whatever. And this officer had a long chat with this guy, a nice long chat. There was no judgmental, anything like that. You know, but a police talking to you kind of bring you kind of, you know,
so
you know, scared, you know, right? But that a long chat, and that guy, he stopped his behavior. It was both a case of using drugs and violent behavior. You know, he threatened the body with a knife and so forth, and his behavior changed immediately. You know, because he studied. No, I really don't want to go to jail, you know, and the police know I am and all of that. So that worked. That was very, very effective. I don't hear much about the community police as, again, I don't know if it still exists, but that was very, very effective. And I want to mention something that a parent did, our aunt did. He brought in a guy. I was working on a particular ward in St. Anne's, and she brought in her son, her nephew. Nephew used to smoke marijuana, and she brought in her son and said he wants the son to see what has happened to people who use drugs. And I was glad. I brought him inside the ward. I'm not supposed to do that. That's why I gave some regulation and so forth. But I brought him inside the ward, and I give him a tour. I showed all the more crazy people, so to speak. And see, that fellow, he used to be on marijuana. That one, he used to use cocaine. And I showed her and said, this is what happened to you. And the aunt was very, very pleased, very, very satisfied. And later she communicated to me that that really changed that particular young man's life. Right? So if thing like this is possible, if thing like this is possible, let young people see the consequences of using drugs, of a life of crime. They see firsthand, right? I don't know how feasible that is. Like the aunt did that, and she didn't know me. She just brought me to St. Anne's for him to see, and I was willing to show him because I like that. I enjoy doing that. I wish it could be done more often.
Yes, well, maybe we need to make a film with you and
Trinity version of State Street.
Yes, State Street, exactly. Do it and take it to the schools and show these students, just like how you all have been going into the schools. I think that's fantastic. That's where you reach them.
Cecilia, can I interject at this point, please?
For sure, Sherman.
Now, I can be controversial sometimes. So there are two schools of thought, right? Two schools of thought. So the version of scare them straight is one angle that could work, right? But in applying your scare them straight, you have to, as a matter of fact, in applying any version, you have to know who is the person you're targeting. Because the other end of it is something that we call the protective factor end of it, where you surround them with so much positive that they don't see the need to go negative.
That is excellent, Sherman, because that's leading us to our next point. You're psychic. According to Johann Hari's TED Talk, Portugal has had the most successful addiction rehabilitation program in the world. So let's see what they did to get better results.
In the year 2000, Portugal had one of the worst drug problems in Europe. 1% of the population was addicted to heroin, which is kind of mind-blowing. And every year, they tried the American way more and more. They punished people and stigmatized them and shamed them more. And every year, the problem got worse. And one day, the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition got together and basically said, look, we can't go on with a country where we're having ever more people becoming heroin addicts. Let's set up a panel of scientists and doctors to figure out what would genuinely solve the problem. And they set up a panel led by an amazing man called Dr. Huao Gulao to look at all this new evidence. And they came back and they said, decriminalize all drugs, from cannabis to crack. But, and this is the crucial next step, take all the money we used to spend on cutting addicts off, on disconnecting them, and spend it instead on reconnecting them with the society. And that's not really what we think of. What they did wasn't really what we think of as drug treatment in the United States and Britain. So they do residential rehab, they do psychological therapy that does have some value. But the biggest thing they did was the complete opposite of what we do. A massive program of job creation for addicts and microloans for addicts to set up small businesses. So say you used to be a mechanic. When you're ready, they go to a garage and they'll say, if you employ this guy for a year, we'll pay half his wages. The goal was to make sure that every addict in Portugal had something to get out of bed for in the morning. And when I went and met the addicts in Portugal, it's fascinating. What they said is, as they rediscovered purpose, they rediscovered bonds and relationships with the wider society. It'll be 15 years this year since that experiment began, and the results are in. Injecting drug use is down in Portugal, according to the British Journal of Criminology, by 50%, 50%. Overdose is massively down. HIV is massively down among addicts. Addiction in every study is significantly down. One of the ways you know it's worked so well is that almost nobody in Portugal wants to go back to the old system.
Yeah, Sherman, does that speak to your point?
Yes, it does.
Positive.
Yes,
Well,
it
but
does.
where is the hope for our people then? Where is the hope for our people?
Now, even before we discuss hope, I have a question for all of us who are here. Before today, how many of us would have known about Portugal and that radical decriminalization act that they did?
I didn't know.
No,
I
neither.
didn't know. Right? I would have known.
Right, I would have known as well. And even now, just for us to think about doing something, think about decriminalizing cocaine. I mean, can we really wrap our minds around that?
We actually had a massive pushback when we decriminalized marijuana. People assumed it would be bedlam.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I think the interesting point he spoke to too was creating jobs and purpose for these people.
Yes.
Like going to companies and saying, hire this person, we'll pay half their wages, because we know that as a drug addict, the stigma, you're not going to get a job. Nobody's going to hire you. So, I think that's an important part of it.
Yeah.
No,
Reconnection seemed to be the magic word.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, guys, we have to move on. We have to move on a little faster. We don't have
We're running out of time. So we know one of the places you can turn to when you're feeling overwhelmed. You can reach out to friends at Lifeline. So let's take a quick look at this commercial. Oh, we have to move on. We don't have time for it.
Lifeline.
So great. Yeah.
Right.
We'll run Lifeline next week. So this is where we say goodbye and thank you to our panel.
Yes, Leo, Michael, Sherman, and Marvin. It was so indeed our pleasure having you here today. It was so enlightening. Thank you very much for your time and thoughts. Thank you.
And I'd like to thank everyone who joined us online. Sorry I didn't get to some of your questions and comments which came in afterwards. We'll get to them next week. And for all of you who engaged with us, join us next week. Same time, same place. I'm Joannah Bharose, and have a great week.
Hi guys, Vaughnette, Bigford here. Much love and blessings to you all. Stay safe. The conversation was so wonderful. The time just gone on us.
Okay, guys, you can say bye. Bye, Marvin. Bye, Michael.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us again.
So much. All right, I'm Cecilia Salazar, and as we always say at OMG, let's be kind to each other.
For 100 years now, we've been singing war songs about addicts. I think all along we should have been singing love songs to them, because the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. Thank you.